And then finally, the new skill I'm going to show you today is the monk. This particular skill is called Wave of Light. He summons a mystical bell that actually he shoots out as a range. It's kind of a combination of a melee and ranged attack. One of the things I really like about this skill is we need to differentiate the barbarian from the monk. They're both melee classes. In this case, the monk, he's about combining mystic arts with martial arts. And so I like the evocative imagery that happens here. Just the concept of a mystical bell that he fires off just is very vivid.
All right, back to me. So I'm going to tell you about a new system that we've added into Diablo 3 in the last year. It's called traits. So what are traits? Well, essentially they're passive skills. They are ways that you can customize and modify and essentially kind of role play with your character and diversify your character builds. So you gain them as you level up. It's basically every other level. You don't get a point every level, but I think it's every odd numbered level you get a trait point. And really the goal of these is to alter your core attributes and aspects of your character. So if you have a barbarian and you want to be stronger, there's a trait for that. If you have a wizard and you want to focus a lot more on elemental skills, you have a trait for that. So, and a lot of it is also to take the opportunity to add flavor to the game world. So every trait has, in addition to just instructions on what it does, it has a little excerpt of some flavor text that tells you about the world, and it also is designed as a skill to sell you something about your character and your class. So I'm going to give you some examples of that. So here's a trait example for the barbarian called Inner Rage. So this highlights something really important about traits. They're not universal to all classes. Every class gets traits that are unique to them. There's some that carry over where it makes sense, but for the most part, they're very unique to each class. So we want to sell the idea that the barbarian not only is an angry dude, which you probably have figured that out already, but that he actually gets power through his rage. And so we have a cool name for it, and also some text that kind of tells you about that. For the wizard, a lot of the traits take on more of a magical bent. We want to make sure that we sell the idea that even when the wizard's not casting, magic missiles and summoning up tornadoes, that there's just something inherently magic about her. So here we have a trait called Prismatic Cloak that essentially makes all of her armor spells more powerful. And it's the idea that she's just focused on this one ability such that she's amped them up. And again, we put some nice flavor text that basically sells the idea of, if you choose to be this kind of wizard, this is who you are. That's something wrong with this thing. I don't know. Yeah, I think the clicker's broken. So why did we decide to do this system? There's a bunch of reasons. The main one's character customization, and those of you who know and love the original Diablo and Diablo 2 know that character customization is a huge part of the game. And if you're new to Diablo, that's what it's all about. So that was a big focus for us. We used to have a system in Diablo 2 where you could spend attribute points on all your core attributes. And this system was much loved as a customization tool, but in actuality, when we looked at it, most of the builds took the exact same points in the exact same areas, even across classes. And so we didn't really feel like it was a good customization system. So traits was really specifically to address the removal of attribute point spending. So as I mentioned before, you want a strong barbarian, somebody who hits really hard, maybe he's really tough. There's traits for that. You can take Legendary Might, which increases your strength. You can take Iron Skin, which gives you more actual armor. But let's say you want a Berserker Barbarian. You care more about attack rate, hitting the enemy before they can hit you back. Well, there's traits for that that can increase your attack rate, can increase the power of your debuffs on enemies. So more variety equals more builds. Every class now has roughly 30 traits, and those traits you can spend between 1 to 5 points in them. That adds up to roughly right now about 90 points per character. And when you consider that you can only get about 29, 30 trait points, it's a lot of customization. So even if we look at this and decide, well, maybe this is too many traits, we'll just reduce the point spending in it because we want to keep the customization really high. So, and one of the last reasons that we really wanted to do this is that there was always a bad decision to make in the previous skill trees where you knew that a passive skill like this, if I take this, it gives me more armor. That's a good skill, and mathematically it makes sense, but math kind of sucks. Like, this is, if Diablo is the active skill, then this guy's passive. Like, I want to spend points in Whirlwind. I don't want to spend points in more armor. So by separating the passive skills from the more active attack skills, which are now completely take up the skill system, we get a much better decision point. Yes. Awesome. Glad you like it. So the last thing is making numbers awesome. So how do you make math cool? Well, we tried to set it on fire and put skulls behind it, and that makes it pretty cool, but it wasn't really enough. So a lot of the design behind the trait system is, if we're going to have you take a passive trait, I don't want it to be like, oh, if you take this trait, you get 0.1% more armor. 0.1% doesn't sound very awesome. So for us, it's like, no, it's a big number. It's 25, 50, 100% more. Whatever number basically sounds cool when we get it. So we're really working on the system to make sure that these don't feel like weird numbers that you're not sure what to do. Diablo customization is very straightforward. The idea is very, simple to grasp, and that's important to us. So we don't consider the system done yet, so I love to share kind of our process with all of you. What's on our to-do list? Well, the UI is not awesome, and it's okay for me to say that because I designed it. So I'm not, maybe my UI artist I can probably, but he just does what I say. So it's just a grocery list right now, and it's not very fun to use. Gaining them every other level isn't perfect. It may be fine, we may ship with that, but right now it feels kind of like, it feels a little weird, like you don't almost know when your trait points are going to show up, and that doesn't feel awesome. So, and there's probably too many of them. Like, when I talk about making numbers awesome, if you go and play with the trait system, because it's fully playable on the floor, you're probably going to say, hey, I thought he said the numbers were going to be awesome. This just seems like too much decisions or too low in numbers. And the truth is, you're probably right. Like, we're looking at that now and saying, maybe we didn't quite get it right. All right, I'm going to pass it back to Kevin.
So before we get directly into the talisman, I want to talk a little bit about charms from Diablo 2. So the charm system, if you're not familiar with it, was a very simple cost-benefit thing, that there was these objects that would sit in your inventory. They take up some of your inventory space, but they would give you a wide variety of bonuses. So this was good. We liked the concept behind the system, and we liked the charms themselves. But what it led to was people keeping as many charms as they could and keeping a tiny bit of inventory space. And we didn't think that that was a great choice to have to make. And you couldn't really resist taking the charms because they augmented your build so well. So, how have we solved this? The talisman, click, there we go, is a dedicated inventory for your charms. Yeah, I know, I feel the same way every time I put a charm in there instead of into my bag. So, not only that, it gets bigger over time. It keeps all of the advantages of the Diablo 2 charm system. You have more charms than you can fit in there, so you still have to choose, pick and choose which ones you're going to have to augment your build. So now that we had a better spot to put your charms and a much nicer spot to put your charms for your sake, we wanted to work on the charms themselves. So how have charms evolved? Well, the bonuses for charms in Diablo 2 were very, very incredibly varied. There was almost no sort of bonus that they didn't have. And in Diablo 3, we're going to have them concentrate on your core attributes. So this is very much about customizing your build, about augmenting, what weaknesses you have or making your strengths better, etc. So the charms are going to be a core part of your build, so they're still very important. And there's different tiers of them in the game, so as you go forward, you're going to be playing with your charms a lot. As you choose new skills, you'll be choosing different charms to try to make up for the options that you chose. And that is the talisman.